Psychopathology for AQA A-level, 15-minute revision. I'm going to release some videos all the way through to exam 3. So if you haven't already, pause the video and subscribe. Don't miss out on those videos. I've got this entire unit broken down to longer videos, so if you get to the end of this and you want it in slightly more detail, check out one of those. Also, if you're new to the channel, I've got videos for the other 3 papers, including all of paper 1. Also, I've just started one of these, so if you fancy helping me make this project grow, check it out. Every patron's going to have access to a feed, and I'm uploading the scripts of my videos as I make them, including this one, which could be quite helpful to you. So let's get started. Either just listen or pause as we go through after each title is revealed. That way you can say out loud what you think I'm going to say. Let's go. Definitions of abnormality. Deviation from social norms. Social norms are unwritten behavioural expectations that vary depending on culture, time and context. Social deviants are individuals who break the norms and are seen as abnormal. Examples of behaviours that are highly cultural specific are tolerance to homosexuality, face and hair covering, queuing, chopsticks and public displays of emotion. This definition respects cultural differences, not imposing a set Western definition of abnormality onto non-Westerners. People living outside of their culture of origin can be judged as normal when they would not be in their original culture. This results in society punishing people who express their individuality in unconventional ways. Failure to function adequately. Individuals have an inability to cope with the challenges of daily life, such as maintaining personal hygiene. They show maladaptive behaviour. Their irrational and unpredictable actions go against their long-term best interest. They show personal anguish and observers feel discomfort in their presence. A subjective measure, as what is coping in the opinion of one observer could be different for another observer. High-functioning psychopaths are abnormal, however able to function well in society, often succeeding. Not all maladaptive behaviour is an indication of mental illness. For example, poor diet and smoking. The definition respects a patient's own lived experience and personal situation. Statistical infrequency. Abnormal behaviour is behaviour that's very rare. How common behaviours traits are can be measured statistically in comparison to the rest of the population. Then unusual behaviour is defined as abnormal. An example would be defining low IQ as someone who is 2 standard deviations below the average, only representing 2.28% of the population. Some unusual traits are positive, like high IQ. It's more objective than other measures, as it's based off statistics. The cut-off point decides when people receive support. The choice of cut-off is subjective. Many psychopathologies are common, like depression, which is 1 in 6. Deviation from ideal mental health. A humanistic definition by Joda in 1958. And rather than defining abnormality, defines features of mental health, and deviation from these indicates abnormality. The 6 features are environmental mastery, autonomy, resisting stress, self-actualization, a positive attitude to yourself, and an accurate perception of reality. It's a holistic approach to diagnosis that helps an individual identify areas of personal development. It's culturally biased towards a Western individualistic perspective, as many cultures do not value autonomy and personal success, focusing instead on performing a social role. Criteria are difficult to achieve consistently, with most people not achieving ideal mental health and being defined as abnormal. The behavioural, emotional and cognitive characteristics of phobias, depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Characteristics of a phobia. Behavioural are avoidance of the phobic object, displaying a panic response and failure to function, so not being able to complete normal tasks. Emotional are high levels of anxiety, stopping relaxation and fear. Cognitive are irrational beliefs about the phobic object, overstating the potential danger or importance of the object. Also a reduced cognitive capacity. Characteristics of depression. Behavioural are weight loss, low energy, self-harm and poor personal hygiene. Emotional are persistent low mood, sadness and reduced feeling of personal self-worth, often linked to guilt. Cognitive are poor concentration and persistent concern, focusing on negative outcomes. Characteristics of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. Behavioural are compulsions, so checking or cleaning behaviours. Avoidance of behaviour that leads to obsessive thoughts. and a reduction in social interactions due to anxiety. Emotional are extreme anxiety caused by persistent obsessive thoughts, and depression due to the impact of the disorder on enjoyable activities. Cognitive are obsessions, which are recurring thoughts focusing on the worst case scenario. Also, an understanding of the irrationality of their catastrophic thinking. The behavioural approach to explaining phobias. According to behaviourists, behaviour-like phobias are learnt via experience. The two-process model describes how phobias are acquired and maintained. In the acquisition of a phobia, classical conditioning suggests the phobic object changes from being a neutral stimulus with no fear response to a conditioned stimulus with a fear response, by being presented with the unconditioned stimulus that naturally causes a fear response, forming an association. Phobias are maintained by negative reinforcement according to operant conditioning. This is by the individual avoiding situations with the phobic object, learning this has the pleasurable effect of reducing anxiety. Phobias might also be learned vicariously from the observation of models according to social learning principles. Watson and Rayner in 1920 showed how phobias could be induced in a child by making a loud noise when presenting a rat. Menzies and Clark. When asked, only 2% of children with a fear of water could recall a traumatic experience of water, suggesting the behaviourist explanation can't account for all phobias. Common phobias for snakes, birds and dogs are understandable from an evolutionary perspective, suggesting an innate biological origin. Behaviourist theories of phobia formation and maintenance have led to effective counter-conditioning treatments, suggesting the theory is valid. The behavioural approach to treating phobias. Behavioural therapies counter-condition phobias, replacing the fear association with a relaxation, calm association. These therapies assume that fear and relaxation are opposite emotions, so they can't coexist. This is called reciprocal inhibition. Systematic desensitization first teaches relaxation techniques like breathing exercises, and then progresses through an anxiety hierarchy, created by the client and the therapist from the least feared presentation to the most. A stepped approach is used, with the client relaxing at each stage. This gradual exposure leads to the extinction of the fear association. Flooding involves an immediate and full exposure to the maximum level of the phobic stimulus. This will cause temporary panic in the client, and they may attempt to escape. The clinician will keep the client in the situation until the temporary panic is stopped due to exhaustion, and the client is calm in the presence of the phobic object. Systematic desensitization is seen as more ethical and is generally more successful with a high completion rate as the participant is in control. Flooding is not suitable for vulnerable people and can result in reinforcement if ended too soon. While both therapies are effective in the clinical setting, often the effect is not generalized to the outside world. Biological anti-anxiety drug treatments are an alternative therapy that can be cheaper than a number of sessions with a trained therapist. The cognitive approach to explaining depression. According to cognitive psychology, depression results from thinking negatively about events, a form of faulty information processing. Beck's negative triad suggests events are seen with a negative bias due to the development of negative schemas about the world, others, and the self. Schemas are mental frameworks that help with shortcuts in understanding the world. Negative schemas result in selective perception, absolutist thinking, overgeneralization, and the magnification of problems. Ellis's ABC model suggests that it's not the challenges in life that cause depression, but the way the individual responds to the challenge. This is dependent on the individual's beliefs. A is the activating event, B is the irrational or rational belief, C is the consequence, the behaviour that is caused by B. Ellis also suggests thinking in absolutes can lead to depression, termed masturbatory thinking. Beck and Ellis's ideas have been developed into a highly effective treatment called cognitive behavioural treatment. The effectiveness of the treatment suggests that the underlying cognitive theories are valid. Cognitive theories struggle to explain manic depressives who have phases of intense energy and confidence. Placing responsibility for depression on the patient can be seen as either empowering them to help themselves or be seen as blaming the victim. There is significant evidence that biological factors influence the development of depression. Some people are genetically vulnerable and treatments that influence the balance of neurotransmitters are effective, meaning the cognitive explanation is not full. The cognitive approach to treating depression. Cognitive behavioural therapy is a talking therapy that focuses on identifying and challenging irrational thoughts. Beck's CBT focuses on present experience. The client is taught thought catching, When irrational thoughts are identified, they're challenged and reconstructed to avoid distortion by a negative cognitive triad. Acting as a scientist, the client reality tests irrational thoughts by carrying out homework and then evaluating the evidence. Behavioural activation is encouraging clients to take part in enjoyable activities, improving emotion. Ellis's REBT, or Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy, adapts the ABC model, adding D for disputation, or a challenge of irrational beliefs, leading to E, an effective change. This disputation can be either logical, do the beliefs make sense, or empirical, is there any evidence for these beliefs? CBT is not effective for clients who are severely depressed, as they will be unable to take part in the difficult psychological work. The success of CBT has led to many people being able to return to the workforce, positively impacting the economy. CBT has been shown to be as effective as medication, with both showing an 81% effectiveness rate, and in combination, 86%. Access to CBT is limited due to the cost and time investment with trained therapists. Often antidepressants are used as a cheaper alternative. The biological approach to explaining OCD. The genetic explanation for OCD is the disorder is inherited. Individual gene markers are often present in sufferers of OCD, such as gene 9, COMT, and SIR. However, the disorder is polygenetic, with as many as 230 individual genes identified. As incidence of OCD is 2% in the general population, family studies support the genetic origin, showing 10% concordance in first-degree relatives, and twin studies showing as high as 87%. The neural explanation for OCD suggests these gene changes influence the function of neural systems, such as low levels of the inhibitory neurotransmitter serotonin, which prevents the repetition of tasks. The communication between the basal ganglia and other structures, such as the orbitofrontal cortex, is abnormal. The basal ganglia is responsible for involuntary movement in Parkinson's, suggesting a link to compulsions. There's an overactivity in the orbitofrontal cortex, which predicts future events, suggesting a link to obsessions. In a study of 169 OCD sufferers and 253 controls, Hu found significant genetic differences linked to serotonin transporters. Family studies are flawed due to the factors of living in shared environments, such as social learning processes. SSRIs are effective in treating OCD, suggesting that the explanation is valid. However, they might be just covering up the symptoms. We can make issue and debate evaluations around biological reductionism, determinism, nature-nurture, and idiographic research. The biological approach to treating OCD. Drug therapies are chemical treatments that influence biological functioning. Drugs often used in depression for the reduction of anxiety are used to treat OCD. As low levels of serotonin is associated with obsessions and compulsions, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are prescribed. This makes the neurotransmitter more effective in its inhibitory role by keeping it in the synaptic cleft. Other drugs are used if SSRIs are ineffective, such as non-selective reuptake drugs, like tricyclics or SNRIs. These influence other neurotransmitters such as noradrenaline. However, these have more intense side effects. Psychosurgery is also used to disrupt or cut the communication between the orbitofrontal cortex and other areas of the brain. More experimental psychosurgery includes deep brain stimulation, the placement of electrodes in the brain to disrupt signaling. Grist in 1995 conducted a meta-analysis of placebo-controlled drug trials, including 1,520 participants, showing all 4 drugs were more effective than placebo, with clopidogrel as the most effective. Publication bias is possible with drug companies not releasing negative results due to a financial incentive to show their drug is effective. Side effects of drug treatments include insomnia and nausea, leading to patients to end treatment. Cost is cheap compared to CBT, however relapse is 45% within 12 weeks compared to just 12% for CBT. So that's Psychopathology in 15 minutes. Easy. So if you haven't already, subscribe, don't miss out on those videos, and if you've checked out our Patreon, thanks very much. The script will be on now. Best of luck with your revision and your exams. See you in the next video.